Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, Teresa's Crafty Cabana. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make some prints that are holiday inspired. I've got 3 different greens that I'm going to be using. Citron green, festive green, and holly green. These are all by DecoArt Americana. They're craft paints. And then I have some reds, a primary red and a alizarin crimson. I picked out this leaf here. This is actually pine needles from when I was on vacation in the mountain area, and I kept it. I'm trying to see how long I can use it for, so it has some paint on it already. Then I've got this little stamp that I made out of foam and a little hole punch just to make some berry little cluster here, almost like holly berries. And then I've got a doily that I cut the center out of. I just want to use the center part. That's where I'm going to put my sentiment, where that's going to be. And some metallic paints. I've got a red one and a green one. The red one is raspberry rose and the green is just a light minty green color. For my first print, I'm going to use the holly green, the darkest green color, and just brayer that nice and even onto my 5x7 gel plate. I'm using my 6-inch brayer. Then I'm using my 2-inch brayer to kind of roll the texture of the pine needles into different areas of the gel plate, removing some of that green paint. Now, as the pine needles become more saturated, it doesn't remove as much of the paint, and I also am trying to be careful not to get the brayer touching the paint on the gel plate because it will remove it. So it's a little bit tricky. I focused on the 4 corners of the gel plate first, and then I went in to any areas that looked like they needed some of the needles added. So when I had used this pine needle the first time, it was while I was on vacation. I had made a video, and one of my subscribers, Susan, wrote, "I think if you keep the pine needles in a cool place, it should keep. Up here in Canada, we buy pine needles and greenery for Christmas in early November, and they keep until January and sometimes until February. Fingers crossed they keep for you." Thank you, Susan, for that tip. I am trying to keep them in a cooler place, and I'll probably end up putting them in the fridge after I'm done using them for my little jelly print session here. But the trip home, they did make it. They did have some paint left over on them, but it still seems to be working just fine. I probably should have grabbed a few more because I really like how these look, but I'm going to have this one for now. And as I'm going along, I'm filling in areas in the center. It's a little bit harder because I don't want to get my brayer touching the plate. So the center parts are a little bit more tricky than the edges. And one final thing I'll do is use my little doily cutout circle piece here, and I'll just place that in the center and just remove whatever leftover paint is still wet there. It probably won't remove it all because the paint's already started to dry. So it removed a fair amount, and I'm happy with that. I do let that dry completely before I add this green metallic paint over the top. This green is what I'm going to use to pull this print. I'm using copy paper, 24 pound. I'll link it in the description, cut in half. And I have a little placement tool that I made from Dollar Tree, a Dollar Tree easel, and I'll link that below as well, the video I made that in. And here is my reveal of the first print, which I think turned out really cool. So Susan had also suggested in another comment that I use those pine needles to make a Christmas card. So that's the purpose of this print. I will be making a Christmas card out of it. Now moving on to my next set of prints, I had embossed this foam. It's the sticky backed foam with one of my embossing. It's just a 2D embossing folders, and I'm going to try that on my gel plate. Again, my gel plate's 5x7, but this foam was not as big as the background, so I put it sideways to see if I can get a good impression that way, and I just had to do it twice. I did kind of rub off some of the excess paint onto my brayer off sheet, just hoping to get a better, more clear impression. I wasn't too happy with the result, but I went ahead and kept it. I did the raspberry red color for the metallic over the top of this print. So we're going to be making 3 double-sided prints for this next part. And this is 2 projects that I'm going to make from this one. So this is my first print for the 3 prints that I'm making here. For my second layer, the one that's going to go on the back, I'm using my primary red. And this time I embossed a piece of cardstock with that same embossing folder. It was a very large embossing folder, so I found when I did the embossed cardstock, it actually fit pretty much the whole entire jelly plate. So I had better results with this, and it removed the paint really nice. So the perfect pearls, I love using perfect pearls. If you're new to my channel, I've got several videos where I incorporate perfect pearls into my projects. I'm going to be starting with this kind of like the neutral white colored perfect pearl, and for this one I'll be using the alizarin crimson over the back side of it. I'm not focusing much on my brayering technique here. I have many other videos that focus a little more on that. This is more to show you how I'm getting these prints and then what I'm going to be doing with them. A lot of people do ask me what do I do with my prints, so I do try to share videos of how I use my prints. Okay, so here we have the second side to this red paper, so that perfect pearl really is nice on this side of the page. Moving on to the next page, we're going to start with the festive green. Do the same thing, put down my embossed cardstock, and I am flipping it, so one side will give you one part of the design and remove kind of like the background part, and another will remove the actual design part. So I do kind of flip back and forth because that changes it up a little bit. I'm using the rest of the white perfect pearls in a few different areas, and then I'm going in with my green. It's not a perfect pearl, but it's something similar. It's a pearl powder, mica powder, and it's pretty much the same. I mean, I find that it's just as vibrant. And then here I've got my green, holly green, that I'm putting over the top of it. It doesn't really matter what color you put behind the perfect pearls, because the pearl powder, it's going to not show through the pearl powder. It may only show through where the other paint color is. So that's the one with a darker green. Now I'm going to do one with a lighter green, starting with the citron color first. Put in my design. Had gold pearl powder this time, perfect pearl powder. For my brush, my little paintbrush that I'm using to apply the pearl powder, I actually got that on Amazon, and they sell them at Dollar Tree. I picked up a few from Dollar Tree. They're just makeup brushes, and they do such a great job at not, I guess, removing their bristles. I found that the pearl brush that comes with the perfect pearls, like a lot of the bristles come out when I'm using it, especially on the jelly plate, because the jelly plate's a little bit sticky. So these makeup brushes, to me, do the best job. And like I said, you can get them at Dollar Tree. I'll link some that I found on Amazon. I don't know that they're the exact ones that I have, but they work the same way. And I just use a microfiber towel, and I just kind of rub it off in between colors, like from the green to the red. I'm just going to keep going here with my different pages, because I want to have a total of 3. So I'm just kind of swapping out my paint colors, looking at what I have and seeing what looks like I'm missing, and just creating a combination of some different pearls mixed with the different greens and reds. For my last one, I ended up doing a red on one side and a green on the other, and I thought that was really cool. Probably would have done more of them like this. I just didn't think about it until I was doing my last one. That's okay, because they're all going to work for the project that I have in mind. So the 3 pages here, you can see the backs and the fronts, and then the 1 page that I'm going to be using to make my card are all lined up here before I cut them up. So for these 3 double-sided pages, I used a circle die cut. I think this is a 2-inch die cut, and I just cut out 12 circles, and each side is showing, so I flipped it so you can see on this one the one side and the other side. I just wanted to get an idea of what they look like next to each other. So this project is going to be a 3D paper ornament. I'm starting out by folding all of my little circles in half, and for each section of paper I'm folding 2 to have one side of the design showing, and then 2 to have the other side of the design showing. You don't have to do it this way, but I found that this was how I wanted to capture the most amount of my different variations of these pages that I made. So that's my first red set. Red on the front and red on the back. And then I did that for the green set, and here for the red and green set. I'm trying to figure out how I want these put together. I kind of wanted alternating red and green. So that's what I'm doing here. Just kind of alternating them, seeing which ones I want next to each other. I was trying not to get the same 2 to be next to each other. And as this opens up, you can kind of see red, green, and I liked how that was looking. So what I'll do next is I will stack each of these in that order inside of each other. Just like a taco, just putting my fillings in. My reds and greens alternating. And once I have them all stacked inside each other, I'm going to try to make them all kind of the same fit together. Just make sure they're not sticking out from each other, so just trying to make them even around the edges. Then I have a stapler. This is just a mini stapler. I think I got this at the Michaels checkout line. Just a really cute little stapler, and it works for this project. I wasn't sure if it would go through all of those pages, the papers, but it did. So, and I happen to have copper staples in this stapler at the time, so the copper is nice because it isn't sticking out too much. It doesn't really matter in the end because you're gonna be gluing these pieces together, so it's not a big deal. So what we'll be doing next is using some double-sided tape. I already went ahead and added it, but you go top, bottom on each half circle. So I like to put the tape on ahead of time, and then once you're removing the tape, to stick it to its partner there, the other side. It doesn't matter if you miss one along the way. Once you open it up and you see you missed one, you can just go back in and remove the tape. But if you try to do it with each, stick it together, do the next one, and you miss one, then it may not have the right pattern. So I did find putting the tape on first helped in this case. I actually did miss a couple as I was going in, and I had to go back to them, but they were already in the correct pattern. All I had to do was remove the tape and press it. It goes together pretty quickly, this part, especially once you already have the tape on there. And so you just keep going back and forth. I start with my 2 sides, so having it flat where those staples are, and then kind of connecting both sides first. And then at the end, we'll come back through and do the top part and then the bottom part. I'd say those two parts are the trickiest. And the stapler, don't know if it was the best idea. I got this idea on Pinterest. They said to use a stapler or some wire. I would even say maybe just using some string wrapped around it. I don't know. There's a couple of different ways you could do this, but let me know if you have an idea besides the stapler to put those together. So here, this first side went together pretty well. Before I glued the other side, I took some of my golden white twine. This is just from Michael's, from the holiday section, holiday craft section, and I made a knot. This was going to be the loop that I would say hang on the tree. So just made a nice sized loop there. And I pulled off a little bit extra at the bottom. My plan was to add a bead at the end, but I don't think I pulled off enough extra. So just a note, add a little bit extra of the twine if you're going to add the beads. So I have these clear iridescent beads from Dollar Tree, just the Crafter Squares section. I took these same two beads and used craft paint for the lighter one and a metallic gold marker for the darker one. So you can easily, and you could probably even use alcohol inks on these to change the colors of them. So I just wanted to show you some options. I'm going to go ahead and stick with the clear beads. They have this iridescent quality to them, which I think looks really nice with these very colorful green and red papers. So that one was for the top part. This bead will go right under where my loop is. I'll cut off my extra twine and then I put it through. Before I put the second bead on, I'm going to go ahead and close up my ornament. To do that, I take an extra piece of the double-sided tape. I'm just going to put that down the center right over my twine, just to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. I had it off to the side, but then I moved it closer to the center because I realized it was going to stick to the other side. So I kind of fiddled with it a little bit, but I'd say to go right over that seam where the staples are, that's probably the best place to have it. Here's the tricky part. So you take all the rest of those pieces and kind of pull them up. And this was where I was kind of pulling my twine to try to get it into the center. The paper was kind of starting to fold a little, and I do think that's because of the staple. It wasn't wanting to kind of smoothly close. So like I said, I would probably try this a couple of different ways. Maybe try wrapping the wire around the center, because then you can kind of move it, or even wrapping some thin cord or something. But this, I was happy with it anyway, because as I kind of played around with it, I was able to straighten out those edges, and it looked okay. So here I put my second bead on, and again, this was such a small amount of my twine left over that it was very difficult, and you had to double knot this because the bead would fall right through if I didn't double knot it. So off camera, I managed to get a second knot on there, and then I'm just trimming off the extra. So here we go. This is the completed ornament. I've got the bead on the top and the bottom, a place to hang it with, and you can just kind of stretch out those pages to make them, and you can kind of fiddle with them a little bit. One thing I wanted to do to, enhance the look of this is take my gold marker, my paint pen, and just go over all of the edges. It wasn't showing up at first, but I just kept going over it, and now you can see it's just a very subtle gold look to it. You could also do this with, say, some glue and add some glitter around the edges. I think that would be really pretty. And you could even go in with some of the beads inside those openings, and you could just really make this really fun. I just went simple, Now I had leftover paper from those circles that I had cut out, so I didn't want to waste them. They were too pretty. I took some smaller circle punches that I had and just cut out all the rest of the paper with these circle punches. So as many of the circles I could get out, I punched out. And that way all I was left with was literally just scraps that were non-usable that I could throw away. But I thought this was going to be part of one of my next projects that I'll also do at the end of this video. I wanted to have a nice variety of the larger circles and the smaller circles. So I went in with the larger circles first for each color, and then the smaller circles kind of took the remaining paper. So I'll set those circles aside and I'll show you what I'm doing with those later. For this next project, it's going to be the Christmas shaker card using that print that I made initially. I cut it down to 4 inches by 5 1/4. Then I have this gold cardstock, foil cardstock I got from Recollections at Michael's on sale. And I cut it down just slightly larger than my print and slightly smaller than my card background. So just kind of eyeballed it and went right in between. I had to keep trimming a little bit just to get it right. And I'll use that to mat my jelly print. Next, I'm going to decorate my jelly print with this Sleigh Bells ring stamp. I'm just going to use my VersaFine Onyx Black ink. I'm putting it right over that circle area where I'd put that doily piece. So that looks nice, but I felt like this card needed a little something extra, so that's when I turned it into a shaker card. I took my 2 circles that the sentiment fit inside of, and then one slightly larger. And I had extra gold foil cardstock, so I kind of lined up those 2 circles using washi tape to hold them together. Just wanted a frame, so that's what I'm trying to do here, is kind of make them even and use the tape so they don't shift, and then that will be my frame for my shaker piece. I won't be using the gold insert part, but I will be using this frame, and it fits nicely right around my sentiment here. If you wanted a simpler version of this, you could just stop with the frame right there. Now I wanted to do a shaker, so I used this transparency film. This is what I use for my shakers. It's real thin. I cut the transparency film out of the larger circle, and I pulled out some glitters that I was going to put inside. I'd already placed all of the foam tape around my frame. And then here I'm going to apply some glue so that I could put my twine down. That'll be kind of like the string holding the ornament. Here I put my glitters already in the center. Now I did use some cornstarch to try to get around the transparency film to try to get some of that static. I've heard that you could wash your transparency with soap and water, and that could also get rid of the static. So you could definitely try doing that before applying your shaker piece over the top. I used some of the extra gold foil to create this little topper for my ornament, and just used a thin black marker to make some lines. And then here I'll just trim off the extra twine. So that is my card piece, and it shakes up nicely. The shaker pieces were starting to stick, so I think I just had to shake it and kind of tamp it down, and eventually those glitter pieces did settle at the bottom. But if it's very staticky out, I do find that those glitters don't want to move. So other than using soap and water for the transparency, has anyone else had any success with making a shaker card and the glitters not sticking to the transparency film or the plastic film? I wonder if the type of film that I use also might just be a little more static. Anyway, here I layered it up on my card base, so onto the gold piece and then the gold piece onto the card. So there's my nice glittery card. For the third project, I'm going to make this ornament shaped card. So I'm using my larger circle and cutting it with just a little bit of the top showing so that it is a card just like this. It does kind of roll a little bit, so I'm going to take care of that with my embellishments that I add. First, I'll put my sentiment in the middle. That's the other stamp on that stamp set I had. It says, "Have yourself a merry little Christmas." And to decorate the surrounding part of that, I took these little, to me they looked like little Christmas ornaments. So I took those larger circles first and kind of evenly spaced those around the circle. Here I'm just placing them just to make sure I have enough to fill in and see if I need to spread them out anymore. I had just enough. So once I applied all of those, then I did some foam tape on the back of the smaller ones and kind of placed those right in the middle, and it covers up the background. And now it stands up nicely and it doesn't really rock like it did before. So that's my other little card that I made. And then to dress it up just a little, I used my gold paint pen and I just kind of filled in the circles. With the larger ones, since they were covered by the smaller ones, I just did kind of 2 half circles. For the smaller ones, I did the full circle. But it does kind of make it look like the shine on the ornaments. So there, that finishes up my cute little card. This could also be used as a tag if you didn't want to do it as a card. So you could eliminate this part where it folds open, but I thought, or you could use it like that as a tag as well. So the 3 projects we got that were all ornament themed. I got this card that had the shaker piece as an ornament. I had the little ornaments that created a wreath around this smaller card. They both open up, which is nice. You can write something, a to, a from, and then a sentiment inside of the card. And then the ornament, which is of course practical because you can place it on your tree. You could always personalize this and maybe put someone's name or a picture or something on the outside of it. But I think that these were really fun ways to make your papers, your jelly prints, and then make custom little projects for the holiday season. How else would you use these jelly prints? What would be another way you could see yourself using these? I was trying to come up with some ideas that were a little more creative or that were practical for me, and these would definitely be 3 things that I could see myself using for the holiday season, either as gifts or on cards I like to send out, or on packages. For that center one, I could totally see myself giving that to my mother-in-law on one of her packages. So I'd love to hear from you, your thoughts, and thanks for watching and being here and following along. I will see you in the next video. In the meantime, happy crafting, y'all.